Hello and welcome to another episode of Church Around the Corner. Glad you could join us as always. We've got some great teaching today. We're going to do a little interview. Got some great things going on. So we're very excited. As always, we like everything that's going on. And for those of you that are new to this program, Church Around the Corner, is specifically designed for ministers, pastors who are interested in television, in broadcast media production for their ministry. It's a way to get your feet wet in video production. It's a very simple way. I'm going to put my email address up, and you can email me if you're interested. It's a way to get involved in TV production and not have to do a contract and get weighted down with all that. We just want to give you an opportunity to see what broadcast ministry specifically is like. Also, we're here for the prayer request line, 478-474-3986. Please call in your prayer request. Now, this is a number that's not answered, but we do get the voicemails off of it. So leave your prayer request. Give your first name, where you're calling from. We don't need your address. We just need the city or the county you're calling from. And then also a prayer request or a praise report. Those are important as well. But if you're a ministry and you are represent a ministry and you want to see what it would like to do some video production, and we will talk to you about that. We're very excited. It's our passion is doing TV production that ministers to the body of Christ and to those who don't know Christ yet. So we're very outreach oriented. As a matter of fact, our founder used to talk about the gospel in every home was what CTN was all about. So we want to make sure we're putting the gospel in every home and on every computer, and every way we can get the gospel out, that's what we want to do. So email me. Would love to talk to you about you hosting a moment on Church Around the Corner. We've been talking in Genesis 37 about the story about Joseph and specifically his dreams. Okay, and we're going to actually go into the context of the dreams on this episode, at least the first part of it. And I just want to run through a few things to set the stage in case you didn't see the last episode where I started this discussion about dreams. Because my pastor referred to this story. We talked about it a little bit in a sermon. And one of the things that came across, he was reading it out of the Message translation. And it really hit me that when Jacob said, "What is it with all this dreaming? How is there dreaming going on around in here?" And so I thought, the church of Central Georgia and East Alabama needs to start dreaming again. We have to have churches that are active and moving and going forward and not thinking so much about the past as they are about the future and the people that are out there right now that need to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. So in Genesis 37, I want to point out a few things, and then we're going to get into the meat here. And I've said some of this the last time, but when the Bible refers to Israel as a person, and they're talking to just one person, that is Jacob, grandson of Abraham, son of Isaac, brother of Esau. I'm trying to put this into context. It was through Jacob that God's plan actually started multiplying, because up to that point, Abraham had two sons, Isaac had two sons, and now Jacob wound up with 12. And that's where we get the 12 tribes of Israel. Jacob loved Rachel, if you remember that story, and then got tricked by his father-in-law into marrying the sister first, Leah. And so all of these 12 sons came through different combinations of these 4 women, because Both Rachel and Leah had handmaids, and that's how it happened. Okay, not a good plan. You'd think they would have learned the way it went down with Abraham, Sarai, and Hagar, but apparently they didn't learn their lesson, and so they wound up having children with the handmaids. So, and you can only imagine the kind of drama that we're dealing with. On top of all of that, since Joseph was the firstborn of Rachel, Jacob, Israel, loved Joseph and showed that love very affectionately and poured out love on him, and that was different from what the brothers got. So the brothers hated him. So that's where we start. And on top of that, Joseph was a tattletale. He saw that his brothers weren't doing something right, and he ran and told his dad. And so we have somebody who made some mistakes, they tattletale, but then also you've got just this hatred going on. And then we talked about the coat of many colors as well. But let's get into the first dream here that Joseph has. But he was working in the field with his brothers. And part of they had many tasks to accomplish, all the brothers. They obviously had, being an agrarian society, there were crops to be brought in, and there were animals to deal with. So we have stories about both. But so Joseph's working in the field with his brothers. And now he was much younger than most of the brothers. And in this first dream, and then he tells them about it, sheaves of wheat, he had this dream of everybody had a sheave of wheat. Now a sheave is what you see, a gathering or one whole bundle of wheat, and you can stand it up and let the wind knock some of the detritus out of there. And so the sheaves of wheat would represent a unit of work, really. How many sheaves of wheat did you get? How many sheaves did you get? Well, in Joseph's dream, his sheave was in the center, and all the other sheaves from the brothers would bow down. And so the brothers were absolutely offended. Not only because of his status, his station in life, it being that he was the younger brother, he was the youngest that could work at the moment, but also because, like I said, there were about 15 years between maybe the oldest and Joseph. But they got offended because what? We're going to bow down to you? You're the least of us. Now, one of the things I noticed is that these sheaves represented their work. And so either they could have thought that his sheave was much better than theirs. So now you're insulting their work. And then that their work would go towards Joseph. That can get people probably very angry. Joseph's dream probably communicated that he and his work were superior. And have you ever had a new job and you try to go in and try to tell everybody what to do, even if you're the boss? It's always best to walk in and see how they do it, then and learn that way, and then see how you can fix it and make it better. When you walk in the door and tell everybody they're doing everything wrong, that's rarely a good idea. But I wanted you to notice here as we wrap this up for today, we don't have any record that any of these brothers ever had a dream. They were just workers. They were obedient because they were doing what their father told them to do, but they were just workers. They didn't have a dream. So the first thing when God gives you a dream, first thing I would say is don't share your dream with people who don't dream. Some people simply do not have the capacity to dream. They cannot fathom what that means. Sometimes they take dreams too literally. And dreams can be literal, but they have weird imagery sometimes. They think that they will be elevated if they tear dreamers down. So some people think that if they shoot your dream down, that means they're elevated. See, I told you he was no good, or I told you he couldn't do that, or I told you he couldn't go and finish college, and I told you he could. So then they're right, and they like to be right. Non-dreamers will doubt your capacity for growth and maturity because they lack that capacity themselves. In other words, you will always be like when you meet somebody and they're the janitor, okay, of the church, let's say. But then as God moves on this person and begins to elevate him or her into a teaching role, a pastor, a leadership role, some people will still think of them as the janitor. We won't allow for growth sometimes. So non-dreamers will doubt your capacity to grow because they don't have a capacity to grow and mature themselves. You know, Joseph was always the little brother. David was always the shepherd boy. They could not fathom that God could use them for anything else. Sometimes you can't understand that people mature spiritually at a different rate than others. What do I mean by that? If I am 5 years older than you, chances are I could be. But if I'm 5 years older than you, I will always be 5 years older than you. I will always have 5 more years of life more than you do. Okay? But spiritually, it didn't work that way all the time. Spiritually, you may have been saved for 2 years, and God's got you in a place of leadership where somebody who's been in Jesus for 20 years is not in a position of leadership in the church. So sometimes the people who don't dream can't understand that because everything should be logical and everything should be to move forward in a logical fashion. I'm reminded too of things like people with collective bargaining agreements and everything's based on seniority. Whereas it doesn't matter if somebody who's only done the job for 2 years is better at it. The person who's not as good at it but has been there for 15 years gets a promotion, and it's only based on how long they've been there and not how good they do the job. Sometimes that fluctuates that way in the spirit realm as well. So the underlying thing that we've got to remember is don't share your dream. When God starts giving you dreams, don't share your dream with people who don't dream because they do not have your best interests at heart and they can't fathom what you're going through or what you're saying. That's about all the time we've got for right now. We're going to come back after a break for more Church Around the Corner. We love you. We believe there is a great harvest here in Middle Georgia, but there are 2 ingredients to bringing in that harvest: planting and preparing. Genesis 8:22 reminds us that as long as the world exists, so will seed time and harvest. In order to see a harvest, you must first plant a seed. We must also be prepared, and we've been doing just that through our New Wineskins campaign. Luke 5, Jesus tells us that new wine must be poured into new wineskins or else the wine will be lost. So where does that leave us? We need partners who will sow a seed into the good ground of CTN Middle Georgia. Partners who see what God is already doing through this station and what He will do through Studio Joshua. In short, we need partners who are expecting to see revival come to Middle Georgia. Would you consider sowing a seed to the New Wineskins Fund here at WGNM? Send a check or money order to WGNM-TV, Suite 364, 5962 Zebulon Road, Macon, Georgia, 31210. Make sure you indicate that this is for the New Wineskins Fund. You can also call us 474-8400 to give by credit or debit card. And of course, you can always give securely through our website at WGNM.com. Thank you and be blessed. Hello and welcome to another section of Church Around the Corner. We're going to start opening up part of Church Around the Corner to include interviews and discussions with churches, not churches, but ministries that are just on the fringe or depend upon the church, and the church can depend upon them as well. And in that light, today we're going to be discussing foster care and with through families for families. And So we have with us Philip Blinson, who's the area director for Middle Georgia for Families. And I just want to talk for a minute. Thank you for coming
Yeah, thank
by,
you.
and we are happy to help support this. Explain what Families for Families is all about.
Okay, so we are a faith-based private foster care agency and ministry here in the state of Georgia. So we license Christian parents to be foster parents, and we partner with local churches to find those potential parents and then to be able to wrap support around those foster families through that local church
Mhm.
partner.
Okay. And this is specifically what you said was it's basically a Christian foster care.
Right. Yeah.
Now, what separates that from adoption? What's the difference between foster and adoption?
Foster care, in Georgia, the goal of foster care is always reunification. So in foster care, you really are hoping and praying that that foster child or those foster children can reunite with their biological mom and dad. So that's the goal. And obviously, in adoption, your those parental rights have been released, and there's a more permanent kind of transfer of custody and parental rights there in
Right,
adoption.
right. Um, Talk about the need, and because a lot of times we get so, and I'm an adoptive father, so I'm obviously very pro adoption. But one of the things, and it seems like the body of Christ as a whole over the last 40 years has really taken up the mantle of adoption fairly well. I mean, we could always do better, but we jumped over fostering in a sense that, sometimes it's best for the child to go back into mom and dad get their act together, whatever caused the child to be placed in a foster care situation gets fixed or remedied to the best of their ability. And so it's obviously best for that child to go back. Um, where how and just now the pendulum seems to be like, or we're starting to fix our ignoring of the foster process. Is that what you're seeing, or is my characterization okay there?
There's still a lot of unknowns in the church world about the realities of foster care
Right.
and the huge need that exists, everywhere across our state. There are 11,500 children in foster care across the state of Georgia. Um, there are here in Middle Georgia, there are over 600 kids that are in foster care right now. And there are in every DFACS county office, there are not enough families to foster the kids that are in foster care. And so we see it as really the church's call to be the ones who step up and be a father to the fatherless. And that's what these kids are for that season is they are orphans in a sense. They do still have a mom and a dad, but that mom and a dad was working through issues. And so for that season, that child or those children really are in need of a mom and dad to step in and be that family structure and that family support that they desperately need, a safe place, to call home during that time.
And what is the when you talk a little bit more about the need, how many children did you say?
There's 11,430 some children that are in care across the state.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many are there, any waiting?
Yeah, I mean they're always coming in, always going
Yeah.
out. So it's a constant changing number every
Right.
single day across the state.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how should the church respond to this? What's our call?
I think our church, the church's call number one is to be aware of what's happening. Right. We can stick our head in the sand and sort of try to tell someone else is going to do it, but that's really not the call we've been given. And so it starts with knowing what's happening, first of all, knowing that, in our state, there are that many kids that need help. Knowing that in our state, every week in the state of Georgia, 9 kids go missing when they're placed in the care of DFACS. That's not DFACS's fault. That's just the reality of living in
Right.
a challenging world. In our office every week, we deny 46 kids. We say yes to 4 kids on average every week and no to
Wow.
46. So we know that in our state, Atlanta is one of the busiest cities in the nation for trafficking. But about 70% of the girls who are trafficked in our state come through foster care at some point. And so we try to help churches to realize here's what's happening, here's what reality is, in your backyard, in your community. And really it's not the government's job to do this work.
Right.
We're grateful that God gives us government. We're grateful for the work they do. But really, God has called and uniquely equipped and empowered the church to be the ones who are the father to the fatherless and to be that safe home during that season in their life.
Right. So how does it work if someone were interested, if there's a family out there or a church, a pastor, how would that work? What would they need to do?
From a church standpoint, what I do as area director is I network with our local pastors to try to get opportunities to come and to share with their church family in hopes of seeing what families God raises up to potentially be foster parents, and then trying to mobilize that local church to provide a support system around that family. So from a church perspective, what a pastor can do is, contact our agency, whatever the area director is in their area in the state, and we love to come and to share with our church family. From a personal perspective, if someone is interested in fostering, probably the simplest way to do that is you go to our website, families for families, number four, .cc, and you'll see a little button there that says foster with us. Every first and third Tuesday evening of the month, we do virtual information sessions through our website, and that's just an hour-long online Zoom meeting where you sort of get all the information you need to sort of know what's involved in fostering with Families for Families, and then you sort of pray what God would have you to do and go from there.
What the families who foster? Give me a broad kind of definition or picture of what our fostering families look like. If there's, I'm sure there's not a one. They don't fit one particular mold, but kind of I want to know the breadth of the types of families that foster.
I mean, there are 30s, 40s. There are some that are in their 50s. There are married couples. There are single foster parents. So there really is a wide variety of individuals
Mm-hmm.
that take part in the foster journey.
And you, because it's a Christian organization, how does that work with the state? How does that? What's that like?
We're a private contractor with the state, and obviously as a private agency, we have and as a faith-based agency, then we have some areas that we make sure that our families adhere to in terms of statement of faith and position on different issues, that kind of thing. And grateful that we have a state that allows us to do that.
Right.
And so we're very thankful that God's placed us where we are,
Yeah.
and we have those freedoms and those liberties to do that.
I can imagine some states would have an issue with that. Yeah, that would be rough. That'd be rough. What is, we've only got about 4 minutes left, but what is the, let's, we talked about families. What is the average kid like that is placed with a foster family?
The majority of children that are placed are ages 8, 9, and under. And most of those in that age range are going to come in sibling groups. And so we try to prepare families that are interested in fostering. If the age range that you want is, let's say, 10 and under, then you really need to be prepared that you want to be able to be able to take more than one child into your home, because
Mm-hmm.
we want to keep those siblings together. The state wants to keep those siblings together, and most of the ages that are in that age group are going to come in twos and threes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's always a statistic that if every church got behind adoption or fostering,
Mhm.
that we could solve the orphan crisis.
Yeah.
Speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, so there are 11,438 kids, give or take, a few every
Yeah,
day in our state. There are twice as many churches as there are kids in care. And so the reality is that this every other church has one family who takes one child, then the church on our own can solve the foster care crisis across our state.
that's amazing to me. Absolutely amazing. And there's such a we spoke before. There's I would highly recommend, and all I can remember is it Turkey Trot, Possum Trot,
Yeah, Sound of Hope, the story
Sound
of
of Hope,
Possum Trot.
the
Yeah,
story of Possum Trot.
yeah.
I would highly recommend that people watch that because I think what I get out of this is that there are kids in our communities that are going through hell. And we as a church, as the church of the state of Georgia, I realize we don't have a state sponsored church, but the church of the state of Georgia can respond to this need like no other group is prepared. And while we use I know what a legal adoption entails, and we're talking fostering too, but there's uh, that the scripture talks about that God gave us a spirit of adoption. I would dare say that also includes fostering. Um, that is something for us, and I think that even if because if God hasn't called you to foster or adopt, then I think He's called all of us to help those who are stepping forward to foster, because that's a burden. There's something that people are willing to take on, and they need to have as many uh, people, a support structure to help with that. And give us the website again.
Families, the number four, families.cc.
Families4families.cc,
Correct.
with the
Yeah.
four as the numeral four.
Number four.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife will be happy that I said numeral because she's a math teacher. So I just think that we got 30 seconds left. I want to thank you for what y'all are doing. I want to thank you for the ministry that is. And I'm really hoping that if you pray about this, that you either know somebody who's willing to foster, or God's dealing with, or you are. So, and maybe you could step up and say, hey, Johnny and Susie, I think y'all are supposed to foster. We're willing to help, and we'll help you this way, this way, this way. But it's something that I think we can do. Go to that website and contact Families for Families. Thank you.
Thank you.